Today I'm behind the wheel of a brand new 2021 Lexus RX 450h. This is the hybrid version of the very popular Lexus RX. Now for 2021, there isn't a whole lot of changes, and that's because in 2020, the RX did go through a refresh already. There are some minor things added on for 2021, and there's addition of a brand new edition, the Blackline edition. Now the Blackline edition is very, very limited. There's only going to be 1,000 for 2021, 750 units reserved for the gas model, and 250 units reserved for the hybrid model. So in this review video, I'm going to show you the outside, the inside, talk about how this RX drives, and tell you more specifically about this Blackline edition, so you can decide if this is the right SUV for you. All right, let's get started. All right, I'm behind the wheel, so let's see how good this brand new RX 450h is and how it drives. To start out, I want to say I'm very, very familiar with the Lexus RX, specifically the F Sport version, and that's because my wife had one. We had a 2019 RX 350 F Sport, so I've driven it numerous times, and I know exactly what I like about it, what I don't. Now, that was the gas model, the RX 350. This one is the 450h, so the drive is a little bit different because of the powertrain, but there are so many things that are alike, and there are a few surprises. Now, let's start out talking about the outside, because the one I'm driving today is a very, very limited Blackline edition. And this is the one that everyone's talking about, mostly because of the outside color. There are two to choose from. You get to choose a standard white or a very unique blue color. It's called Gracian Water, and it really makes this RX pop. It really looks different. And this is based off the F Sport, so if you're looking at the front end, you still have that large spindle grille. It's different from a regular RX spindle grille. The mesh design is different, and the grille is also much bigger, more pronounced, right? But with this Blackline, the chrome surround is like a shadow chrome. It's no longer a regular chrome color, so it's a little bit different. The headlights are still very sleek. There is tri-beam that's optional, but regular, you still get the full LED treatment with daytime running lights also. There's no more fog lights, surprisingly. Underneath, the chin spoiler, very unique. They're specific to S Sport, but it did change in 2020 slightly. Overall, the front end is still very aggressive. I know some people, they're still not a fan of the spindle grille, right? It's something you have to get used to. I've gotten used to it by now, but still, some people like it, some people don't. But this new blue color definitely makes everything pop. Now, looking at the sides, it's the same kind of profile. The RX profile is unique in a way because the tailgate is so slanted down, right? And there's a big drawback to that that I'll get to in a little bit. But you still have that, right? The blue still pops out. You have a lot more black. You have some black cladding underneath the door, right? And also those huge 20-inch black wheels. Very unique looking. They're specific to the Blackline edition, and that's matched by a lot of black. There's a lot of black cladding underneath around the wheel fenders and so forth, right? So you do have that good mix of black, good contrast, right? However, it's not all black, so that's a surprising thing. You can see the mirrors are black, you know, the privacy glass is black, yes, but the window surrounds are not black. They're still chrome, right? So a little weird. When something is called Blackline edition, you would figure all the chrome pieces, right, have been removed with black. That's not the case. So you still get a combination, which overall still looks pretty good, but I kind of expected everything to be blacked out. Now, moving to the back, I don't know how you describe it, but it's a RX. Let's just put it that way. You still have a shark fin antenna, a large spoiler, privacy glass. You have two very high LED taillights. They're really high up, and they look mean. They look like they're angry, right? And then underneath, you have a little bit of cladding and design on the lower bumper. Most unique aspect to this Blackline edition is the color, right? It has to be this new Gracian watercolor. Very unique. Now, moving on the inside, what's different with this Blackline edition? Well, when you look in the trunk, unfortunately, I don't have the pair of luggage that you get usually with a Blackline edition. You're supposed to get a pair of travel luggage. They're zero Halliburton luggage, and they're very, very expensive. But you're supposed to get those. I didn't get them with this tested car. But you do see how the carpet, the surrounds are blue, right? So that's very unique. It kind of matches the outside, right? Now, since I'm in the trunk already, there's a privacy cover on top. There's handles to fold down the second row on the right side, and you do have a spare tire underneath. The one problem with the trunk is because of how slanted the tailgate is, and I showed you guys that already, I talked about it, it cuts into your trunk space significantly. So yes, even though the trunk is deep and wide, but it's not very tall because of the tailgate glass. So you do have to watch out for it, because most SUVs, you can put large boxes, tall boxes, a lot of luggage, right? In the RX, you have to be careful. Now, if you fold down the second row, yes, you do get more cargo space, but as you see, the second row does not fold down flat. They're about a couple inches off the ground. So again, that does take up some of the cargo space. Now, when you move to the second row, of course, everything is covered in beautiful leather, and you can see right away that this is a Blackline edition, because now it's not just a black leather or red leather that you normally find. You have a combination. You have black and white combined, right, with blue stitching. Very, very unique. You see it on the door handles, right? And you see it on the seats. So that's how you can tell right away you're in a Blackline. Also, the carpet is still has that blue surround. Now, I'm 5'10", and I have plenty of space in the second row. You can see about 6 to 7 inches of legroom, about 3 to 4 inches of headroom, and the seats do slide and recline, so that's pretty nice. And passengers do get a pair of vents and 2 USB ports and 2 cup holders. Now, when you move up front, the dash design, center console design to the RX is a good one. It's a sleek, modern design. The way it's shaped and contoured, very driver-centric, and it looks good. It does look good. Now, just like the back, you can tell right away the leather up here is very, very different, right? There's more white and black contrast. You see a lot more with these seats up front. Also, with the center console, you do see that there is white leather that's wrapped around on both sides. And on top of everything else, you know, you still have a good mix of aluminum, right? Aluminum on the door panels, on the handles, right? On the center dash, and in the center console too. I mean, everywhere you look, good mix of aluminum, black leather, and white leather, and blue stitching. So as for the Blackline edition, that's pretty much it in terms of the changes, how this is different from a normal F Sport. So what about the drive? How is the RX on the road? Well, the RX is really nice on the road. It's one of the most comfortable SUVs that you can buy today, and that is why Lexus sells a boatload of RXs every single year. In fact, this is the best-selling luxury car, period. All other manufacturers is trying to outdo the RX, and it's really hard to, because it has a really fine balance between good modern looks and comfortable drive, and of course that Lexus reliability, which other manufacturers have a hard time competing with. So as for the suspension, it's pretty soft because this is F Sport, which means that the suspension has been tuned to be a little bit more sporty, and because this Blackline does have 20-inch wheels, the ride is a little bit stiffer. I've driven a regular RX 350 before, and it was like riding on a cloud. With F Sport, it's a little bit stiffer, but still it's very comfortable. Right, so this is kind of like a good balance between the two. All the potholes, dips, stuff like that, you don't really feel it that much, right? But it does feel a little bit better around corners. You're not like floating around. It doesn't feel too top heavy, right? So the suspension is pretty good. Okay. So I had an opportunity to accelerate from about 15 to 60 miles per hour. This is the first time I have driven and accelerated in a 450h. Overall, it's okay. it didn't feel as lively as the V6 gas model, which is surprising because the engine output is actually more. There's more ponies under the hood than the gas model. So in total, you have a gas motor paired with 2 electric motors, and the total output is 308 horsepower, which is pretty good. And what's even better is the overall fuel economy. MPG combined is around 30, and that's a pretty significant jump from the gas model. In a normal RX, you do get an 8-speed automatic, which feels like an automatic. With this one, you do get a CVT transmission because of the hybrid powertrain. And a CVT around town feels fine. I've driven this RX 450h for a few days now. Around town, it feels more than fine. It's really nice. But when you're really gunning it, you really put your foot down, you do unfortunately get that CVT feel, right? Like the RPM never drops. You get slightly that CVT drone with the engine, right? And under full acceleration, I could just tell it's not as lively. Now, because this Blackline edition is based off the F Sport, the F Sport does get a special steering wheel. It looks better, it's more modern, and it's thicker. The leather feels better. There's no wood. Now, the steering feel itself is pretty light. It's in between. So it's not as light as some other luxury cars, but it's not very heavy either. So it's somewhere in between. So for Lexus buyers, I think this is a good compromise, right? A lot of Lexus buyers, they like that light steering, but some of the younger crowd, they want something that feels more lively, right? So this is kind of like in between both. Now, as for precision, it's okay too. There's just slight steering play, but overall pretty precise. So when you combine this really nice looking and nice feeling steering wheel with this decent weight and this precision, it's pretty nice overall, and this complements this suspension really well. Now, as for visibility and driving position, both are good. The visibility is really good, all angles, front, side, right? Even the blind spot isn't bad. And the rear isn't bad too. The second row headrest doesn't really block anything. So visibility overall is pretty good. Driving position, this is as high up as a midsize SUV. Now, honestly, the RX 350, in terms of size, it's hard to categorize because it's just slightly bigger than a compact luxury SUV, but it's kind of like slightly smaller than a midsize luxury SUV. It's kind of like right in between. But in terms of sitting height, you're definitely sitting as high as a midsize SUV, so it's nice. Good commanding view all around, so pretty good. Now, I just got done talking about space, right? So that's where it's a mix of good and bad. I already talked about how cargo space is lacking, right? Now, as for passenger space, it's okay. It's okay. Now, up front, I would say that, shoulder room isn't the biggest, hip room isn't the biggest because of how enormous the center console is, but it's not bad. It's kind of like in the middle for this class. Now, as for space in the second row, it's pretty good. Plenty of leg room and headroom, but width, a little bit lacking for midsize SUVs. So if you want to fit 3 adults in the back, could be a little bit difficult because of the middle. And also the middle seat is very elevated, so it cuts into the comfort and headroom. As for cabin noise, I would say this is about middle of the pack for a luxury midsize SUV. It's quiet, but it could definitely be quieter. I do hear quite a bit from cars passing by. So wind noise, nothing. Road noise, nothing. But cars passing by, I hear quite a bit. And also I do hear a little bit from this hybrid powertrain. So even though it's quiet, it's not the quietest in this class. Now, in 2021, besides the Blackline edition, Lexus did make a few minor tweaks. For example, blind spot monitoring and rear cross traffic alert. This safety feature is now standard across all RXs. Before, it was an optional feature, but now it is standard, so that's pretty nice. And something else is an optional feature, and that is a wireless charger. somehow wireless charger has been missing inside the RX. Lexus just couldn't figure out where to put it, but they did. It's underneath, underneath the climate control function. So you can opt for it. Unfortunately, it's not standard. It's additional $200, but you can get it now. So that's another change for 2021. Now, I did mention that I'm very familiar with the Lexus RX, and I know the good and bad, right? So what are some of the things that are bad that I wish Lexus improved upon? Let's start out with the biggest thing, in my opinion, and that is the seats inside the F Sport. Now, inside a regular RX, a non-F Sport, the seats are very comfortable. Very comfortable. I had a few before that I test drove, and I had a few as loaner cars, and very comfortable. Unfortunately, with the F Sport, Lexus decided to put these very aggressive sport seats inside. And the thing about sports seats is they look good, especially on paper, but they don't feel very good. And we had to live through that. Me and my wife, we both hated this. The bottom cushion of the F Sport is very, very narrow, and the side bolsters on the bottom cushion is very hard. So that means that that cushion just cuts and sits right in the middle of your thigh. Right, so that is something that I've always dreaded. Anytime I drove that RX we owned, the bottom cushion just really just cuts into your thigh every time. So unless you're really tiny, you have very small hips and very small butt and thighs, you're going to notice that. So that is the biggest drawback to the RX F Sport. And unfortunately, inside this Blackline edition, I get that same feeling. Now, something else that I don't like is this infotainment screen. Yes, it's a gigantic screen. It's a 12.3-inch screen, and you can customize it somewhat. The interface is okay. It's not super responsive, but it's not slow either. And there's a lot of things you could look at. Now, in 2020, they moved the screen up slightly, so you can actually touch it. Before, it was really far back. 2020, they moved it up, I think about 6 inches, and they made a touch, which pleased a lot of people. Unfortunately, though, the way it's angled, it's still very hard to reach, and it's really hard to be able to get to whatever menu item through touch. So because of that, you have to still settle with this touchpad setup inside this RX. And this is the same touchpad setup in all Lexuses, and unfortunately, it's just not very good. It's just not. I get anxiety every time I use this touchpad to try to navigate through the infotainment screen. So that's the second thing I don't like about the RX, specifically this infotainment screen. The good thing is Lexus decided to add Apple CarPlay and Android Auto in 2020. So if you didn't like to mess with any of these things, simply plug in your phone and then just use your phone. So you can do that. Now, you can opt for a few things with your RX. First, you can opt for a heads-up display, which is pretty nice. There's a dedicated button on the left side, and it just pops up. It's really hard for me to show you with my GoPro, but it is a pretty good one. It's pretty big, bright, and you can see all the essential information. Something else you can opt for is the bird's eye 360 view camera system, and it's pretty nice. It spins around and it shows you what's around your RX, and especially if you're in reverse, you get a 360 view and what's behind you. It's nice, but I will say that the interface and the resolution isn't the greatest, so it doesn't look nearly as sharp or as nice as some of the others in this class, even though the screen is so big. So it is nice to have, but not the best of this class. Now, there are other things that you get standard, like heated steering wheel, heated seats, ventilated seats. Those are nice. Also, 3 settings for memory seats. That's pretty nice too. Now, inside this Blackline F Sport Hybrid, yes, that's a mouthful, there is drive modes. So you can go into eco mode, sport mode, and normal mode. And because it's a hybrid, you can also select EV mode. A few other things I didn't touch upon. First, the gauge cluster. Because this is based on the F Sport, it's a little bit different. You still have like a 4-inch screen on the left side, and you can scroll through essential stuff like TPMS, safety features, trip computer, stuff like that, right? The screen is not the brightest, so it's kind of hard to see at times. And inside the middle, you have like a analog bezel, like a silver bezel, right? Kind of fools you into thinking that is analog, but it's really digital. You have a circular screen inside, and it just tells you what gear you're in and also your miles per hour, digital speedometer, right? And because it's a hybrid, it kind of tells you if you're in charge or eco mode or power mode, right? As for everything else in the dash, pretty standard. You have an analog clock. I think that's a little gimmicky, but you do have a couple knobs, volume and scrolling. They're made of aluminum. They actually look pretty good and feel pretty good, so that's pretty nice. Also, you have a few buttons for selecting your media and also your climate controls, right? Pretty simple to understand. Now, something else I'm disappointed by with this Blackline edition is the fact that a sunroof or a panoramic sunroof is not standard. You have to opt for it. I don't remember the last luxury car I've tested that didn't come with at least a normal sunroof, right? So unfortunately, it's a package with this RX, so you don't get roof rails unless you get the moonroof, right? So that's something else. I don't know if you guys picked up on the outside, there's no roof rails, right? So, so unfortunately, roof rails and the moonroof is optional, and a little disappointed by that. As I'm coming to a stop, I'm pleasantly surprised with this hybrid, because normally hybrids, their braking feel a little bit weird because of regenerative braking. Normally when you let off the gas, the car stops a little bit faster, but you don't get that. You don't get that inside this 450h. And also when I was just braking, the brakes aren't stiff. They didn't feel different. It actually felt like a normal RX, right? So the brakes actually really good. Lexus tweaked it so that you really can't tell any different. So next up, let me talk about the different trim levels and pricing and give you my final thoughts on this brand new Lexus RX. As for trims, the RX 450h comes with 3 different levels. The base RX 450h starts around $47,700. Then you have the F Sport, which is a tad over $51,000. And finally, you have the 450HL, which is slightly longer, and that's also a tad over $51,000. Now, with the Special Line Edition, since it's so rare, I don't even see it listed on the trim level page. The price, however, will be a tad under $52,000. To conclude, the 2021 Lexus RX 450h is a very good all-around luxury SUV that many will enjoy. The RX has an aggressive exterior, especially with the F Sport package, and the Blackline accentuates it with a very special blue color and black wheels. The RX also has an interior that feels modern, and everything is positioned well. The drive is comfortable, quiet, and the powertrain is more than adequate for most buyers and delivers outstanding fuel economy. The RX also provides plenty of room for passengers, and there's plenty of tech all around. The bad include the very aggressive front seats with the F Sport package that cuts into your thighs. The cargo room is smaller than it should be due to the tailgate. The wireless charger that's available now is optional, and so are things like a moonroof and roof rails. Lastly, the Blackline Edition is so limited, it may be hard to find one. Overall, I'm giving the 2021 Lexus RX 450h Blackline a score of 100. To learn more about it and to see where it ranks, check out driversonlyrankings.com. Hit the like and subscribe to the channel, and check out these other videos.